Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. My name is Chris Lennox. I'm a systems technician for the Allegheny County Emergency Services in Pennsylvania, 46 years old, divorced, 2 grown kids I rarely see. I live alone in a 3rd-floor apartment above a locksmith shop in Dormont, just southwest of Pittsburgh. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, dusty blinds, and a scuffed-up coffee table I've been meaning to replace since 2019. I used to love how quiet it was at night. Just the rumble of the trolley and the hum of the refrigerator. That quiet has been gone for 6 days now. Everything started unraveling on a Wednesday, August 13th, 2025. It was warm that day, sticky warm, thunderstorms crawling in from the Ohio River, the kind that coated the whole city in a film of static and heat. I remember it clearly because I was sitting in the radio room at the county's emergency ops center near Moon Township, half listening to scanner traffic while updating firmware on one of our Motorola APX 8500 consoles. At 11:38 a.m., one of the dispatchers, Cheryl, a no-nonsense woman who'd been on the job 25 years, called out, "We've got a 1085 at UPMC Mercy. Paramedics are asking for immediate assistance." Something about a violent patient. That's not too unusual. ERs get aggressive patients all the time. Overdoses, mental health breakdowns, the occasional PCP case. But within 5 minutes, 2 more alerts came in. Another assault at Allegheny General, and then something from the St. Clair ER out in Mount Lebanon. Same pattern. A combative patient who had to be physically restrained, biting staff, showing extreme resistance to pain. I looked up from the console. Cheryl's eyes met mine through the glass. We didn't say anything, but there was a mutual shift in our posture. That quiet sense you get when instinct beats logic to the finish line. By 1 p.m., the scanners were lighting up non-stop. Pittsburgh EMS started broadcasting unusual traffic, multiple assaults, medics requesting backup, even fire crews pulling back from scenes due to hostile civilians. Then came the calls from the police zones. District 3 officers responding to reports of people attacking each other along East Carson Street in Southside. One officer keyed up, breathless. "We've got people, multiple individuals, charging at vehicles, biting. They're not responding to orders. One just got hit by a cruiser and kept moving." I leaned back in my chair, hands off the keyboard. This was no drug case, no riot. Something was happening, and nobody had a name for it yet. Around 2:30, the Pennsylvania State Police patched into our system using mutual aid channels. They were requesting coordination for a potential hazmat response at a group home in Wilkinsburg. Unknown biological threat, the report said. Symptoms include hyperaggression, bleeding from the mouth and eyes, and abnormal resistance to injury. That's when I turned on the news. Local outlets were slow to catch on. WPXI was still running segments about school board meetings. But a live video from a pedestrian near the Strip District started circulating on social media. Chaotic footage of a man lunging at bystanders outside a Primanti Brothers sandwich shop. His shirt soaked in blood, his movements jerky and unnatural. People screamed. Others tried to intervene. He bit someone, full-on tore into the guy's shoulder like it was a steak. Then 2 more people joined him. The crowd scattered like pigeons. I called my daughter, Erin. She's 21, studying nursing at Slippery Rock University. No answer. I tried her roommate. Nothing. Then I called my ex-wife, and for the first time in 3 years, she didn't pick up either. By 3:15 p.m., the county declared a Level 3 emergency operations activation. That's the highest before martial law. All off-duty personnel were recalled. I was told to report to the regional comms hub under the Highmark Stadium, formerly Heinz Field, where emergency broadcast coordination was moving. I didn't go. Instead, I drove home. I stopped once, at a Sheetz on Banksville Road, to fill up and buy water. I could already see the fear setting in. The cashier's hands were shaking. People were filling carts with snacks, gas cans, batteries. Some guy was yelling into his phone that they're saying it's rabies or something. But I'd worked long enough in public safety to know this wasn't rabies. This wasn't anything known. Back at my apartment, I locked the door, pulled down the shades, and powered up every scanner and emergency feed I had. For the next 9 hours, I listened to the city collapse. By Thursday morning, the power was still on, but internet was slow. Most major channels had gone to continuous emergency coverage. The White House declared a federal biological emergency under the Stafford Act, but it was already too late. Reports came in that the outbreak, whatever this was, had spread beyond Pennsylvania. Similar events were happening in Cleveland, Baltimore, parts of northern West Virginia, and even Chicago. The CDC issued guidance referring to a hemorrhagic neurological disorder of unknown origin, advising citizens to stay indoors and avoid contact with infected individuals. But there was no cure, no vaccine, and no coordination. I rigged up a VHF antenna to monitor airband radio traffic. Commercial flights were being diverted or grounded. Pittsburgh International was overwhelmed. I could hear pilots begging for clearances to land or refuel, and tower operators refusing them. One FedEx cargo plane declared an emergency and landed without approval. I still don't know what happened to it. I tried to call Erin again, still no answer. It wasn't until Friday night that I saw the first infected person in person. I heard screaming from the alley behind the locksmith shop. I looked through the kitchen blinds and saw a woman, barefoot, blood down the front of her blouse, crawling over a dumpster. Her leg was broken, bent the wrong way, but she didn't even notice. She kept moving, dragging herself toward a man who'd frozen halfway out of his car. I turned off the lights, sat in the dark, waited. That night, I finally got through to someone. My neighbor, Matt, who lived 2 buildings down. Former Navy, quiet guy in his 50s, worked as a maintenance supervisor for Pittsburgh public schools. He had guns, a generator, and a 6-month stash of dry food. He told me he'd been prepping for this kind of thing for years. "I've got a shortwave rig running," he said. "Some hams out of Ohio are still up. They're saying it's in Columbus now. Hospitals are gone. FEMA's overwhelmed. No flights in or out." He paused. "It's not just sick people, Chris. It's like they're already dead. I've seen it. Shot one twice, sent a mass, and it just kept coming. By Saturday, the city was under National Guard lockdown. Roadblocks appeared on the Fort Pitt Bridge, and Black Hawk helicopters began sweeping the rivers. But it wasn't enough. Too many people had already fled, and too many were already infected. I made the decision that morning to leave the city. Matt and I agreed to head north, away from major roads, away from population centres. We packed our vehicles with everything we could carry. I had a Beretta M9 from my brother, who served in Iraq. Matt had a Mossberg 590 and a .308 bolt action. We had radios, medical supplies, fuel, and maps. Real paper maps, not GPS. We left at 5:22 a.m., taking Route 90 north through Wexford, then cutting east on back roads toward the Allegheny National Forest. That was our plan. Reach the woods, find a fire tower or hunting camp, and wait it out. Maybe the government would regroup. Maybe a vaccine would appear. Maybe this whole thing would just burn itself out. It didn't. By the time we reached Butler County, the roads were already choked with abandoned cars. Families had run out of fuel. Flat tires, dead batteries, hastily packed SUVs with windows smashed in. We saw 2 state troopers near a blocked off ramp, one of them lying motionless, the other sitting on the pavement, cradling his sidearm and whispering something we couldn't hear. We didn't stop. We drove until we hit a logging road east of Tianesta. Matt's truck made it through, mine didn't. I ditched it in a gully and transferred everything I could into his bed. We hiked for hours, overgrown trails, muddy creeks, mosquitoes biting through our sleeves. But by dusk, we found what we were looking for. An old fire lookout tower. Steel frame, weathered wood cabin at the top, solar panel cracked but still partially functional. A narrow staircase led 20 feet up, swaying in the wind. That's where I am now, typing this on a ruggedized laptop I found in a Forest Service casebox. The solar charge holds for about 4 hours a day, long enough to write and monitor radio chatter. I try to conserve energy by shutting down all unnecessary functions. No backlight, no Wi-Fi, just the bare essentials. The old broadband repeater on the ridge above us is long dead. There's no signal up here except what we can pull off VHF and UHF bands, and most of that's just static or broken transmissions. Once in a while, I catch fragments of emergency broadcasts repeating on loop. The same message: shelter in place, avoid contact, trust no one showing symptoms. It's all outdated now. Matt and I have made the tower livable, in a loose sense of the word. The cabin at the top is just wide enough for 2 cots and a folding table. It's got old plywood shutters we reinforced with steel fencing from a collapsed game trailgate we found nearby. There's a narrow steel trapdoor in the floor where the stairwell reaches the platform. At night, we chain it shut. We rigged a simple pulley lift using a 5-gallon bucket and rope to haul supplies up and down without having to climb every time. It's crude, but it works. The forest around us is still, deceptively peaceful. During the day, it almost feels like we're just camping, birds singing, chipmunks darting between ferns, shafts of light breaking through the trees like nothing has changed. But then the wind shifts and you catch that smell, the heavy chemical rot of the infected. It lingers in the low ground, carried along the valleys and hollows like fog. Sometimes we hear them at night, down below, moving through the trees with that same disjointed shuffle, groaning like a stomach full of broken glass. One of them wandered close last night, brushing its shoulder against the steel frame. We didn't move, didn't breathe. Eventually it wandered off, swaying like it was drunk or blind. I don't think they can climb ladders, not yet. Matt keeps a watch list in a spiral notebook. Sightings, radio logs, known dangers. He's meticulous, far more methodical than I am. He records everything: dates, times, GPS estimates based on old trail markers, and even the number of rounds we've used. We started with around 400 rounds of 9mm and just over 70 shells for the shotgun. As of today, we're down to 243 and 52, respectively. We use them only when absolutely necessary. Most problems we try to avoid entirely. Yesterday, we intercepted a transmission out of Buffalo. A ham operator named Curtis, callsign W2IMK, claiming a large group had barricaded themselves in the Albright Knox Art Gallery and were holding out with National Guard defectors. He said they had food, medicine, and solar panels from a local university project. His voice sounded raw, like he hadn't slept in days, but the signal was clean and the coordinates matched. It's almost 140 miles from here, too far to reach on foot without serious risk. We wrote it down, marked it on the map, and added it to what we now call the list. Most days are spent scavenging. We rotate shifts. One of us stays at the tower with the rifle, while the other searches the woods for useful gear. 2 days ago, I found a broken down game commission truck near a creek bed. The driver's door was wide open. No sign of the ranger, just a rusted shotgun rack and an open first aid kit on the floorboard. I pulled out everything worth saving: gauze, iodine, a water purification pump still sealed in plastic. There was a field notebook in the glove box, soaked through with rain, but I dried the pages by the camp stove and read what I could. His last entry mentioned wild behavior in a pack of whitetails. Said they were running in wide loops, crashing into trees. I've seen deer spook before, but nothing like that. Maybe the virus affects animals too. Or maybe they're just as scared as we are. We don't sleep well anymore. Between the random gunshots in the distance, the low moans echoing through the hills, and the cold, it's hard to find rest. Even dreams are twisted now. Flickers of memories overlaid with static and blood. I dream of Erin. Sometimes she's on the couch in her old dorm, smiling at me. Other times, she's standing at the edge of a road, her eyes gone pale, mouth twitching. I wake up drenched in sweat, heart hammering. Every night. On Monday morning, we spotted smoke about 10 miles to the west. Thin, grey, and steady. We took a compass reading and guessed it was near Tidiate, maybe along Route 62. Too far to investigate, but proof that someone else is still alive out there. Matt wanted to go look. I talked him out of it. We made a pact on the second night. No splitting up, no hero runs. Not unless there's a real, confirmed extraction site. Later that day, a Black Hawk passed overhead, low and fast, following the river gorge. No markings, just flat grey paint and a tight formation. It didn't respond to any radio hails, and it was gone before we could even signal. Either military or a private PMC group. Contractors running rogue evac ops maybe. I don't know who's still giving orders. I'm not sure anyone is. Every time I think we've seen the worst of it, something shifts. Like this morning, Matt picked up a new emergency code on the Federal Interoperability Band. It was faint but unmistakable. FEMA Region 3 Relay, scrambled partials only. The phrase Eagle Protocol repeated several times. That's not a standard term. We dug through my archived PDFs of DHS manuals, old FEMA disaster guides, even military field books. Nothing. Whatever Eagle Protocol is, it's not public-facing, which means one of two things. Either there's a new containment strategy in place, or someone's enacting black-level directives. Neither of those ends well for civilians. We've started noticing another change too. Behaviour in the infected. At first, they wandered, moved towards sound, light, motion. But in the past 48 hours, they've begun clustering. Not just herding like animals, but forming groups that move in the same direction, purposeful. Last night, from the tower, we watched a group of 17 pass along the ridgeline, single file. All of them silent. That's not mindless wandering, that's tracking. I don't know what they're following. Heat, chemical scent, some neurological pattern, but they're learning. It's not a virus anymore, it's an ecosystem, and we're not the apex predators here. Food is running low. We've got some MREs Matt salvaged from a crashed guard truck near Tylersburg, but they won't last forever. Hunting is risky. The sound of a rifle echoes for miles. Snares have worked okay for rabbits, but anything bigger and we draw attention. We're planning to move farther north once the weather turns. Maybe across the border if we can find a safe way. Canada hasn't said much. The last clear Canadian transmission we heard came out of a relay from Kingston, an automated signal on VHF Maritime Channel 70, repeating a digital mayday and instructions to maintain radio silence. After that, nothing but static. We don't know if the silence is because they managed to contain it, or if it's because they didn't. Either way, heading north feels less like a plan and more like a hope we're both too exhausted to challenge. 3 days ago, we finally attempted the VOR station mission. We packed light, 1 backpack each, essentials only, a solar charger, radio splicer cables, a compact battery inverter, and what's left of our high-gain whip antenna. I carried the M9 and a signal flare. Matt took the shotgun. We left the tower at dawn, moving through fog so thick it seemed to deaden even the sound of our boots against the pine needles. It took nearly 6 hours to reach the ridge. The VR was still there, an old FAA beacon dome surrounded by a sagging chain-link fence and a maintenance shed with its door hanging by one hinge. The array was dead, of course. Panels shattered, inverter rusted through, but the ground station still had an antenna tower, and after an hour of gutting it with the tools we brought, we got a bypass rigged into the analog repeater. With enough direct solar juice and careful timing, it might be able to punch out a 10-watt signal burst every few minutes. Before we left, I climbed the tower, just to see. From the top, I could see the skeleton of the land, laid out in a way no map could ever teach. Low hills braided with timber trails, creeks tracing pale lines through deadfall, and here and there, a glint of reflection. Windows, still intact. Possibly. I counted at least 6 plumes of smoke rising across the horizon. Small, controlled. Survivors maybe, maybe not. The hike back wasn't quiet. Somewhere near Hemlock Run, we ran into a problem. The kind you don't hear until it's breathing near your shoulder. I don't know if it had been stalking us or just happened to wander across our trail, but it was fast. Faster than any infected we'd seen. No sound, just movement. Ripping through the brush like it had no weight. Matt fired once, and I swear the thing jerked sideways but didn't drop. I got a better look at it. Bare chest, raw skin, slick with black grime, eyes like ruptured bulbs. Its teeth were wrong, not jagged, just flat, but cracked, worn down, like it had been biting through things for days. I put 3 rounds in its side before it finally crumpled, gasping like a dog with a crushed lung. We didn't stay to investigate. That kind of noise carries. Back at the tower, we made the decision. One more night to rest, one more chance for a response to our signal. Then we leave. There's a line on the map, an old snowmobile trail running northeast through the forest, then merging with an ATV track that crosses Route 6 near Kane. If it's clear, it'll take us to the Allegheny Reservoir. After that, we try for the Kinzua Dam Bridge. Beyond that, we push for the St. Lawrence. We packed that night quietly. No words needed. I stripped my load down to what I could carry without slowing us. Beretta, 1 spare mag, fire starter kit, water filter, map case, poncho, thermal socks, and a Polaroid of Erin when she was 10. Matt took the bulk. Food, the heavier rifle, the radio, and the bolt cutters. If we hit fencing along the way, those might buy us hours. We left the tower at 4 o'clock the next morning. The fog was thick again, but colder now, like the air had turned metallic. We moved in silence, keeping to tree cover, pausing every 20 steps to listen. Just before sunrise, we heard distant gunfire, single shots spaced apart. Not panic shooting, someone was working methodically. That's not always good news. Crossing Route 6 was harder than expected. The road was a graveyard. Abandoned PennDOT trucks, flipped cars, a Greyhound bus that had been pushed into a ditch. The windows were broken, and the inside stripped of anything useful, but the frame smelled like bleach and old blood. A message was scrawled across the side in dried red paint. Sick inside. Closed doors mean closed mouths. We didn't linger. We camped that night in an abandoned scout lodge tucked behind a thicket of maples near Kinzua Creek. Place looked untouched. Wood stove, dusty bunks, even a few sealed cans in the pantry. A journal was left on the kitchen table, entries from March through May. A troop leader had brought a group of teenagers here to wait it out, he wrote. They lasted 21 days. Then one of the kids got sick. Last entry just says, buried 3, rest went north, maybe Buffalo. We stayed long enough to rest and recharge the solar pack. No response had come in from the beacon. The log remained empty. The sky crackled with wind. On day 4 of our trek, things started to unravel. Matt twisted his knee for real, crossing a culvert full of wet shale. Swelling began fast. I stabilized it with some ace wrap and a plastic splint, but our pace dropped in half. He insisted he could keep going, but I could see it in his face. He knew he'd slow us down. That night, as we camped under the canopy of a rock overhang just south of the Allegheny River, he handed me the radio and the flare gun and told me to scout ahead. I didn't argue. I didn't tell him. I knew what he was doing. The next morning, he was gone. Left a note in the corner of the bivy sack, short. Keep going. Don't waste time on dead weight. One of us has to make it. M. I didn't chase him. I moved fast after that. Took the river trail. Kept the current to my left. The terrain was rough but quiet. No signs of life, infected or otherwise. Until the dam. The Kinzua Dam complex is massive. A brutal hunk of concrete and metal slamming into the reservoir like the hand of God. It should have been deserted. It wasn't. A group of people, maybe a dozen, had set up a defensive camp on the east side near the maintenance building. Makeshift barricades, trash fires burning in oil drums, a weather-beaten American flag flapping from a pole made of conduit pipe. They saw me coming before I got within 100 yards. A girl, maybe 20, pointed a bolt action at me while someone else yelled commands I couldn't hear. I raised my hands, slow, showed the M9, magazine removed, slide locked open. They let me approach. Their leader was a woman named Savita Guy, former Army Reserve Pittsburgh native, worked logistics before everything fell apart. She didn't smile, didn't shake hands, just stared at me like she was calculating whether I was worth feeding. I told her the truth, everything, about the tower, about Matt, about the beacon, about Erin. She nodded once and handed me a water bottle. "You can stay the night," she said. "Then you pull your weight or you move on." I stayed. Tomorrow, I'm helping them scout a fuel cache east of the spillway, something left behind by Corps of Engineers before they evacuated. If we can get the generator online, they might be able to power the gatehouse and use the dam as a choke point, a stronghold, a place to survive longer than most. Savita's group is better organized than most I've come across, at least from what I've heard on the radio. 12 people total, 5 with some form of military or emergency services background. 2 ex-paramedics, a machinist, a woman who taught high school chemistry, and an older guy named Fred, who used to be a bridge inspector for PennDOT. He's the one who mapped out the dam's infrastructure. Said he worked on a post-flood assessment back in 2011 and kept all the structural drawings on a USB key, something he never thought would matter again. Turns out it's saving lives. The plan was simple on paper. 3 of us, me, Savita, and the younger guy, Lewis, would take a side-by-side utility vehicle from the dam's maintenance lot, follow a service track half a mile east to an auxiliary shed where fuel drums were supposedly staged for spill response drills. The rest of the group would hold the perimeter and monitor via two-way. We left at 6:30 sharp, sun still low over the reservoir, fog lifting off the surface like steam from a battlefield. The trail was partially washed out in places, ruts filled with standing water, a few downed birch trees we had to saw through. We moved cautiously. The smell of rot hangs in these woods like a warning sign. You never get used to it. Sour, wet copper over burning plastic. We didn't see any infected, but you never really see them until they're too close. It's the silence that betrays them. We reached the shed just after 7 o'clock. Still locked, padlock rusted but intact. Lewis cut it with bolt cutters while Savita covered us with a Mini 14. Inside, we found what we came for. 8 sealed 55-gallon drums marked diesel, training only, plus 2 crates of emergency flares and a collapsible water tank still shrink-wrapped. Jackpot. Enough fuel to keep the generator running for a month if rationed. But the noise brought attention. Always does. On the way back, maybe 300 yards from the dam, we spotted a figure standing in the trees just off the trail. It wasn't moving, just standing, head tilted slightly, arms limp. At first, I thought it was a statue, some kind of twisted joke left behind. Then it moved. Savita fired once, a controlled shot to the chest. It staggered but didn't fall. Lewis panicked and fired 2 more rounds, both wide. I raised my sidearm and went for the knees, dropped it fast. That's the trick if you can't get a headshot. You don't kill them, you cripple them, make them crawl. By the time we reached the barricade at the dam, we could hear movement behind us. Not a horde, but more than 1, maybe 10, maybe 20. We radioed ahead, and they opened the gates just long enough to get us inside. The steel cables slammed shut behind us. We spent the rest of the day reinforcing the perimeter. Fred rigged up motion alarms using copper wire and scavenged door chimes. The generator came online around 3 p.m, floodlights blinking to life across the causeway. It felt like hope. That night, we made the call. We couldn't stay, not for long. The infected are learning, or adapting, or simply accumulating in the quiet places. They're slower in the cold, but not dormant. We'd seen signs, nesting behavior, carcasses dragged into basements and cellars. Some of them seem to move only after dark. Whatever this infection is, it's changing, mutating. Cold doesn't stop it. Fire barely slows it. And worst of all, the dam isn't as secure as it looks. The concrete has hairline fractures. One of the spillway doors is jammed half open, leaving a vulnerable crawl space. Savita knows it. So does Fred. She pulled me aside that evening after the second shift rotation and asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Are you still going north?" I nodded. "Then take Lewis. He's green but steady. And take the emergency radio. We've got an extra cell booster and lithium brick. I'll give you a narrowband repeater. If you hit the St. Lawrence, broadcast. We'll listen." We left at dawn. The final leg of the journey began on foot. No vehicles, fuel's too valuable, and engines too loud. Just me, Lewis, and 70 pounds of gear divided between us. We followed Route 321 north, skirting the edges of defunct hunting camps and shuttered ranger posts. In some places, the woods had already reclaimed the road, roots cracking through asphalt like veins. 3 days in, we encountered our first burned-out town, Elko, New York. Small place, less than 500 people before all this. Now, nothing but blackened shells and scorched trailers. Signs of a defensive stand, barricades made of tires. Rusted propane tanks rigged as traps. Charred remains on the front steps of what used to be a post office. Lewis found a diary in the rubble of a schoolhouse, its pages mostly intact. The last entry, no rescue, no news. We gave them fire, and it wasn't enough. They don't feel pain. God help us. We didn't camp that night. We pushed north, crossing into the lowlands, aiming for the southern banks of the St. Lawrence River. The temperature dropped sharply, frost forming on our canteens by morning. Wildlife thinned, so did the infected, but not entirely. On day 7, we found the Canadian border, or what was left of it. The official station at the Thousand Islands Bridge was gutted. The checkpoint had been overrun, bullet casings everywhere, scorched earth, and the twisted remains of several armoured vehicles. But the bridge itself was intact. We crossed. On the other side, silence. And then, finally, salvation. About 6 kilometres into Ontario, we picked up a signal on the emergency repeater, a beacon, repeating every 15 minutes, French and English. To any survivors receiving this broadcast, this is Sector 4 safe zone, civilian-controlled perimeter, clean water, limited medical, proceed with caution, coordinates to follow. It took us 2 more days to reach the coordinates. A series of waypoints led us through narrow trails, clearings marked with reflective symbols, red paint, and coded radio pings. And then, there it was. A fenced compound built around an old hydroelectric plant, watchtowers, solar panels, people, actual people. They scanned us, checked vitals, decontaminated our gear. No signs of infection, no bites, no exposure. We were processed, logged, and given ration cards. I didn't even know what to say. That night, after a meal and my first real sleep in 2 weeks, I asked the coordinator if they picked up a signal from a girl. Early 20s, student, name Erin Lennox. She checked the registry and paused. A few names matched. One was close. No photo, no current location, but it was flagged as Transit Group C Northeast Corridor, confirmed arrival at Sector 2, May 28th. It was a shred of hope, the first in weeks. So here I am, sitting beside a silent river in a country that wasn't mine yesterday, listening to the low whine of wind turbines and the hum of battery stacks, writing on the same ruggedized laptop that brought me here. If you're reading this somehow, know that survival isn't the end of the story. It's just the prologue. The world we knew is gone, but someone out there is still trying to build something better. And I'm going to find my daughter, even if it takes me the rest of my life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.